People tend to confuse these two terms all the time. Frugal versus cheap. Some use them interchangeably. They say there is no clear difference, but I'm here to tell you there very much so is a difference. Frugal is frugal, cheap is cheap, and I'll break that down in this video. What's good, YouTube? I go by the name of Q. If you're unfamiliar, if you are familiar, shout out to you. Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm just gonna break down the difference between frugal and cheap. I've been called cheap a lot. Like over the last 6 years that I've been on my financial journey, I've been called cheap so many times, and I just laugh, right? I don't take it personal. It is what it is. The whole time I know I'm frugal though, but most people think there is no difference between frugal or cheap, which is why I decided to break it down via video so we can get the clear understanding. The actual definition of frugal, the word frugal, the meaning of it is sparing or economical with regard to money or food. Simple and plain. That is the actual definition from Google. If you were to Google the word frugal, it would tell you sparing or economical with regard to money or food. Makes sense to me. Now for cheap, however, here's what it means. Cheap is of an item for sale, low in price, worth more than its cost. I'm gonna say that again. Of an item for sale, low in price, worth more than its cost. So those two are really similar. Like if you were to go to Google, type in cheap definition, enter, it will tell you the same exact thing. Of an item for sale, low in price, worth more than its cost. Now as far as being a cheap or a frugal individual, that's a whole different story. I'll put that out there. I consider myself to be extremely frugal. Not even extremely frugal, but to be frugal. I'm very frugal. If you've been following me for some time, then you're well aware of this. I'm not cheap. Have I had cheap moments? Yes, but not for a very long time. I've been frugal for a while though, but as far as frugal, I'll give you a prime example. I just bought a lawnmower. We have a decent sized yard. I gotta cut the grass. The grass needs to be cut. So I said, you know what? I have to buy a lawnmower. Let me check the prices of all the places who sell lawnmowers. There's a Home Depot really close to me. I could have easily said, you know what? Let me go to Home Depot and buy a lawnmower. I know they have lawnmowers there, so let me just go over there really quick. I didn't do that. What I did was research what type of lawnmower I wanted, and I went and checked every place around me that sells lawnmowers, and I landed on Costco. Costco had the same exact lawnmower that Home Depot was selling for $350 for $250. So instead of going to Home Depot and spending $350, I went to Costco and spent $250 and got the same exact lawnmower. That's frugal. That's frugal in my eyes. I saved $100, got the same product, and you know what? I needed a lawnmower anyway, right? Why spend more than you have to? Now, cheap on the other hand would be if you put a hole if you put a hole in one of your shoes, right? You done wore these shoes so long, so much that there's a hole and your sock is coming through the bottom of your shoe. So you say, you know what? Instead of buying a new pair of shoes, which you may have the money for, let me just get this duct tape and put it over the hole. Like, that's cheap. That's cheap. Like shoes, even if they're not name brand, you can spend $15, maybe $10 for a nice pair of shoes or replacement pair of shoes versus putting duct tape. I'm laughing because I know people who has done this. I know people who've done it, and it's just like, they have thrift stores in this world. They have thrift stores. You can go spend $10 to $30 on a pair of shoes. You don't have to put duct tape on your shoes, man. That's cheap. You see the clear difference there. Frugal is economical. It's economical. It's doing what makes sense for you and your money, trying to make it stretch, right? Cheap has that similar connotation where it's trying to make your money stretch, but it's also just like holding on to your money so tight that you don't want to spend anything, even if it'll benefit your life. Like, it's a clear difference there. So sometimes I take offense when people call me cheap, but most of the time it is what it is. I understand people use frugal and cheap interchangeably, and like I said, it is what it is. Another example I'll give you of frugal: shopping sales and buying things on sale. So people may confuse this a little bit where it's like, okay, you're trying to save money, you're being cheap by only shopping the sales. No, I'm being smart and economical by only shopping the sales. Do I only buy things that's on sale? Absolutely not. But for the main things I need, if I know I use this particular item all the time, of course I'm gonna buy it when it's on sale. I'm gonna take advantage of that sale whenever they pop up because I use this particular item relatively frequently. Another example would be buying winter clothes in the summertime or buying summer clothes in the winter time. During those seasons, if you buy them at those times, they're typically cheaper. For one, why are you buying a winter coat in the summer? You should be looking for tank tops and bathing suits and swim trunks and all of these summer clothes, right? No. absolutely not. Things are heightened during the summer. So if you're buying winter clothes in the summer, it's gonna be on sale, it's gonna be cheaper. That's economical, that's frugal. But there is a cheap aspect to it because the actual items are cheaper. That doesn't make the person cheaper. So that's another confusion piece that I see. It's like you want to use the definitions, but pertaining to a person versus pertaining to the actual word and meaning, that's what it is. Now, cheap on the other hand would be your extreme couponers, even the regular couponers where they actually have coupon binders. I've seen this before. I used to work as a cashier at CVS fresh out of high school, and it was this lady. Now, this is one I consider cheap, but I also consider it frugal because she had the system. She had the system wrapped around her finger. She had it down packed. She had a process. So she would go and get everything she needed, but by the time she used all her coupons, the lady would spend like 7 cents or 12 cents, and I'm just looking like, wow, you really finessed the system, and I can't even knock it regardless if you holding up my line or not. You finesse those coupons, but that's not your average person. Most people aren't extreme couponers, but those who do cut coupons and do all this stuff, they only do them just enough because they see that it's a discount, not seeing that it's actually taking more time away from you. It's actually costing you more in opportunity cost. So you can do something worth way more for your time. You get way more bang for your buck than clipping coupons and doing all this extra stuff. So in my personal opinion, that's the difference of being cheap versus being frugal. But again, you see that it's a slippery slope. It's a very slippery slope. Then you have dining out versus making your food at home. Then you have driving a used car versus driving a finance car. So there's so many aspects, so many debates that, so many conversations that can be had about being cheap versus being frugal. But I noticed that it's a never ending conversation. It literally never ends. And myself personally, I can go back and forth, but it's a personal thing. It's definitely a personal thing pertaining to personal finance, which is personal. I don't look at it as a negative thing all the time. Now, sometimes it can be, but ultimately, if you decide to be cheap, that's your prerogative. If you decide to be frugal, that's your prerogative. If you decide to just ball out, don't look at prices and just spend it, that's your prerogative as well. Like, I plan on getting to a point in my life where I'm not overly hyper focused on prices. Like, yes, I still check the tags when I go shopping. Wherever I go, I still check the tags. Now, I'm not checking them as frequently anymore as I get into a greater financial position, but at the same time, it's all personal. It's all personal, and you have to do what's best for you. So this video is hopefully can be used as a measuring stick to debate. If you have any other insight in terms of frugal versus cheap, leave them in the comments. I would love to hear your opinion on it because, like I said, it doesn't always have to be a negative thing, but I'm genuinely curious to see what people decide about this. I got a couple more examples that I'm gonna leave y'all with, but this one came back to bite me, and I didn't realize it until I got older. When I was younger, my dad, I mentioned my father a lot because he was a single parent and he helped raise me and my sibling, but he taught us some valuable lessons. He would always say, being cheap will cost you more in the long run, and I never understood what he was talking about. He was telling me this at like 10 years old, 12 years old, and I'm just like, okay, like I'm not buying anything but candy anyway, but carry on. Being cheap costs you more. So he would say, son, spend the money up front. More than likely, if you spend the money up front, it will last you longer. Whatever you buy, if you spend the money on quality things, they will last you longer and you won't have to constantly buy that thing. And that makes perfect sense to me because sometimes we cheap out on things. We cheap out. We buy the cheap stuff and they end up breaking. Then you got to replace it and it breaks again. And you got to keep replacing it and it ends up costing you more versus just buying that quality thing one time up front and it lasts you 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, etc. You would only have to replace it once or twice versus the cheap thing that you got to replace 20, 30 times and you just scratching your head trying to figure out like, why is this even happening? It's because you are being cheap. So that's the negative aspect of being cheap, and that's why I'm not a huge fan of it to this day, because it definitely costs you more in the long run. And from a food perspective, I plan on owning some chickens. My grandfather had a farm in the South, my grandparents I should say, and we had our own chickens, we had our own pigs, we had a lot of self-sufficient things, and that's one thing that I took from my childhood. So I want to share this story as well. I won't be too graphic, but for all my vegans out there, plug your ears. Plug your ears, because I get your mission and I fully understand it. But my grandfather, he had all types of animals, from cows to pigs to chickens to horses to everything, you name it, down in Alabama. And we ate good. We ate good. He went hunting. Sometimes we ate deer, we ate rabbit, we ate whatever animals he had, he would breed and slaughter. And I'm sorry if this is graphic, but that's just what it was. But inside that chicken coop, that was my favorite place, because I got to hang out with the chickens and the hens and the roosters, and I got to retrieve the eggs every morning. So we never had to pay for eggs. We never had to pay for milk, because my grandparents had cows. And that's one thing that I would love, and I actually plan on getting into that. Of course, it won't be that extensive, because you can't have that right now here in Chicago. It's just not enough space. But I do plan on having me some chickens. I love eggs, right? I love my eggs. So if I have my chickens, I won't have to buy eggs ever again. I also plan on planting me some tomatoes, planting me some lettuce, planting me some cabbage, planting me a bunch of different vegetables. Now that I own land, I plan on doing all of these things, so that way in the future we can streamline it and never have to pay for certain produces. So in my mind, y'all let me know if I'm wrong or not, but I consider that frugal. I consider that frugal, which is economical, which is self-sufficient, which is saving money and getting the full benefit out of your land if you are a landowner. And that's the last example I'll give. Like this video if you like it. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Also follow me on IG. Q Makes It Happen on Instagram. Join the Q crew. Click the join button down below. Become a member of my accountability group. You get more one-on-one with me, exclusive content, and it's also a way to support the channel. I go by the name of Q, and like I always say, if Q can make it happen, you can make it happen. I'll holler at y'all next video. Peace.